The moment my garden hose choked out its last pathetic stream of water, I knew something was terribly wrong. I stood there on my sun-baked porch, staring at the useless plastic snake in my hand as it wheezed like a dying accordion. The summer had been brutal. 4 consecutive days of 95-degree heat had turned the city into a pressure cooker, and water restrictions had us all on edge. But that sound, that low, rhythmic gurgling from beyond the fence made my blood run cold. It wasn't just any sound. It was the unmistakable purr of a hot tub in full operation, and it was coming from Karen's side of the property line. I crept toward the wooden barrier like a detective on a stakeout, my curiosity battling with a growing sense of dread. When I finally peeked over, what I saw made my jaw drop. Karen lounged in royal splendor, oversized sunglasses perched on her nose, a crystal goblet of Chardonnay glinting in the morning sun. She luxuriated in swirling bubbles at precisely 11 a.m., as if the entire city's drought was nothing but a minor inconvenience. But it wasn't just her casual disregard for water restrictions that stopped me cold. Following my gaze down to the ground, I spotted it, my garden hose, snaking its way under the fence like a thief in the night, stretching directly from my outdoor spigot to feed her private spa oasis. "Hey, Karen," I called out, loud enough to wake the dead. "That's my water line you're using." She tilted her head slightly, as if a mosquito had buzzed too close, then returned to adjusting her bubble jets without missing a beat. The audacity was Olympic level, not just theft, but blatant, arrogant theft executed with the confidence of someone who'd never faced consequences. I marched to her gate, knocking hard enough to rattle the hinges. Nothing. I knocked again, harder. Finally, Karen lifted her designer shades a fraction of an inch. "Oh? Is something wrong? I'm having my self-care hour." "You're stealing my water during a drought," I snapped. "You've got a hose running directly from my faucet." Karen slowly blinked, tilted her head like a confused puppy, and delivered her masterpiece. "Oh, relax, Thomas. It's just water. You weren't using it anyway." I actually laughed, the kind of hysterical laugh that escapes when reality warps beyond recognition. The sheer nerve of this woman. Disconnect it. Now. She smiled serenely, reached for her Bluetooth speaker, cranked up the spa playlist, and closed her eyes as if I'd vanished into thin air. When I called the HOA that afternoon, desperation dripping from every word, they asked for the bureaucratic impossible. "Sir, we'll need a formal complaint with photographs, signatures, timestamps, and a written explanation of the confrontation." I delivered everything, including crystal-clear footage from my security camera showing Karen dragging the hose across property lines. I expected swift justice. What I got was a fine. Violation of Community Civility Code. Accusatory behavior toward neighbor. Read the official notice. Karen had beaten me to the punch, reporting me for verbal intimidation and harassment over a gardening dispute. That night, nursing a can of soda in my kitchen, I read the fine notice for the 20th time, hoping the words would suddenly make sense. They didn't. Karen had already twisted the narrative, playing the HOA board like a well-tuned violin. I pulled out my phone and found an old contact, Ricardo Mendez, an old buddy from high school who now worked sanitation for the city. If anyone understood how to reroute fluids both legally and creatively, it was Rico. "Rick, it's Thomas. Haven't heard from you since the sewer backup at the stadium." "Tommy boy, what's up?" "You ever hear of someone using their neighbor's water line to fill a hot tub?" Rick's laughter could have shattered glass. "That's a new level of freeloading, buddy." 2 days later, Rick and I met under the guise of routine garden maintenance, inspecting the outdoor spigot Karen had commandeered. Rick examined the setup with the keen eye of a surgeon. "What are we aiming for here? Just stinky water or full-on sewer symphony?" I grinned wickedly. "Somewhere between rotten egg bath and zombie swamp." He chuckled, scratching his chin thoughtfully. "I've got a spare sump pump from an old project. There's an outdated gray water maintenance line running right under your crawl space. Legal to tap, as long as it doesn't cross with domestic plumbing. Can we make it look normal until she turns it on?" Rico's eyes gleamed. "Partner, I can make it absolutely poetic." 2 nights later, While the neighborhood slept and Karen's tub stood dormant and entitled in her yard, Rick and I installed our masterpiece. From the outside, it looked like any ordinary water connection, but flipped the hidden switch and it redirected flow from pristine city water to the most noxious reservoir this side of the county line. We concealed the valve control beneath a decorative stone troll, a $5.99 purchase that would soon become priceless. The next morning played out like clockwork. Karen emerged in her signature sun hat and flip-flops, wheeling out her tub with the casual air of someone who'd never been told no in her life. I watched from behind my vertical blinds as she connected my stolen hose to her intake valve, then sauntered over to my spigot. With a theatrical twist of her wrist, the water began flowing. She had no idea I'd flipped the secret valve 2 hours earlier. This wasn't crystalline tap water filling her tub. This was recycled waste straight from the city's forgotten gray water tunnels. But I didn't film. Not yet. This was strategic reconnaissance. I needed her to believe everything was normal, to lull her into complete security before springing the trap. The following day arrived with vengeance, temperatures pushing 98 degrees. My lawn had surrendered to yellow defeat. My tomatoes resembled shriveled memories of their former selves, yet somehow Karen's corner of paradise remained immune to nature's fury. At precisely 10 a.m., I heard the familiar hiss of hose on concrete. Karen's routine never varied. Roll out the cover, set up her wireless speaker, cue up her meditation playlist, and commence her daily theft of my water. But this time, victory was within reach. The trap was set, the trolls stood silent guard, and I'd activated the gray water system at dawn. Karen twisted my spigot, completely oblivious that her personal paradise was about to become a personal hell. I sipped iced coffee and watched through my kitchen window blind as she dipped a perfectly manicured toe into the filling tub. Nothing seemed amiss at first. The temperature felt appropriate for the season. She even did a little victory dance, clearly celebrating another successful morning of petty larceny. She slipped off her robe, revealing a designer swimsuit that probably cost more than my monthly water bill, and eased into the tub with practiced elegance. Leaning back against the inflatable rim, she closed her eyes in what I imagined was blissful ignorance. Then it hit her. Karen's perfectly plucked eyebrows twitched. She sniffled delicately, then waved a hand near her face as if shooing away a persistent fly. She shifted in the water, trying to ignore the growing stench. But as the jets kicked in, gray water began performing its most spectacular magic. The tub foamed, not the pristine white bubbles of luxury spas, but a sickly yellow froth that grew with each passing moment. Mysterious clumps surfaced like tiny zombies from the deep. Karen sat bolt upright, squinting into the murky depths of what was once crystalline water. She scooped up a handful, raised it to her nose for a direct inspection, and then, her scream could have launched satellites into orbit. She scrambled backward, slipping and sliding like a cartoon character on ice. Her foot caught the tub's edge, sending her somersaulting sideways into her own perfectly manicured lawn. She landed face first in the grass, a brown-tinged waterfall of sewer sludge cascading down her body. I pressed my hand to my mouth, struggling not to laugh out loud as she rolled over, sputtering and gagging. Her designer swimsuit was now a tie-dye disaster of wastewater. She grabbed for a nearby towel, but it only smeared the ooze across her arms and legs. "What the hell is this?" she screamed, staggering around in circles. "What is this stuff?" Her meditation playlist still played through the speaker, offering peaceful affirmations about flowing like water. The irony was too perfect. Deborah from across the street came running over, saw the mess, and immediately backdoored with both hands raised as if Karen had sprouted contagious tentacles. "Oh my God, what happened? It smells like—" "Oh no, oh no." Karen gagged violently and in grand dramatic fashion vomited into her award-winning flower bed. I turned away from the window, partly out of pity, mostly because I was laughing so hard I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just inconvenience I'd caused. This was complete and utter humiliation, served ice cold with a side of justice. That evening brought a knock at my front door. Karen stood there, soaked hair pulled into a severe bun, oversized sunglasses hiding what I imagined were murderous eyes. In her white-knuckled grip, an official-looking manila envelope. "You think you're clever," she hissed through clenched teeth. "This is going to cost you everything." "You stole my water," I replied calmly. She sneered like a villain in a soap opera. "And you poisoned me with sewage. That's assault." With theatrical flair, she hurled the envelope at my chest and stormed off. Inside was a letter claiming to be from Goldstein and Associates, attorneys at law. A quick Google search revealed the firm didn't exist in our state's bar registry. Another Karen production, likely purchased from some legal document generator website. Still, I forwarded everything to my actual attorney, just to be safe. The next day, predictably, brought another HOA letter. They were responding to Karen's latest complaint about illegal plumbing modifications and public health violations. Once again, I was cast as the neighborhood villain. Thankfully, I'd had Rico document everything: timestamps, blueprints, and a notarized statement confirming the gray water line's complete separation from the house system. Unlike my neighbor, I didn't operate on lies and manipulation. I'm not using stolen resources for personal spa treatments. My response read. Karen escalated to posting passive-aggressive notes on the community board about biohazards and irresponsible neighbors poisoning family spaces. She even attempted to gather signatures for my removal from the HOA entirely. Only 2 people signed, Karen herself and Marcus, her part-time dog walker, who probably feared for his job security. What Karen failed to realize was that I wasn't her only victim. Neighbors started reaching out privately, thanking me for finally standing up to her tyranny. Stories emerged: how she'd redirected someone's gutter during last year's storms, flooding their basement; how she'd plugged into outdoor outlets to power her holiday parties; how she'd been stealing water, electricity, and goodwill for years. No one had dared confront her until now. I spent that weekend fortifying my defenses, adding a lockable cage around my spigot and installing secondary valves for extra security. The stone troll remained in place. He'd earned his honorary position as garden guardian. Karen vanished from her yard for nearly a week, plotting her next move behind drawn curtains. But people like her don't surrender. They regroup, recalibrate, and return with renewed vengeance. Sure enough, within days I spotted her in her backyard, clipboard in hand, measuring tape extending across her property like a surveyor preparing for battle. She photographed everything: my yard, my spigot, even my security cameras. The next strike wasn't far off. I could feel it gathering like a storm on the horizon. The silence didn't last long. Karen might have been humiliated, but she wasn't the type to crawl away and nurse her wounds in private. She was the type to reload, recalibrate, and return with bigger weapons. Within a week of the sewer-soaked spa incident, she was back on her feet, literally pacing her backyard in what looked like a $300 activewear set, muttering into her phone and gesturing wildly at her fence, her deck, even at the sky, as if it had personally betrayed her. I observed from my kitchen window as she stopped near the infamous hose connection and began taking photos with her iPhone. Not of the hose itself, but of my yard, my spigot, even my security camera. The woman was building a case. I just didn't know for what crime yet. Then arrived the certified mail. Inside was a fresh complaint, this time not from Karen's imaginary law firm, but from an actual attorney's office. After some research, I confirmed they were legitimate, though I suspected Karen had misrepresented the situation entirely. Her letter claimed emotional distress, health violations, and exposure to biohazardous waste materials causing severe psychological trauma. She demanded compensation, financial damages, a public apology, and the immediate removal of my hazardous plumbing installation. I stared at the paperwork in absolute disbelief. She was attempting to sue me for contaminating the hot tub that she filled with my stolen water. It was like a burglar demanding you replace their shoes after they tripped on your threshold while robbing your house. I contacted my attorney, Gerald Fitzpatrick, forwarding all documentation: the security footage, the HOA correspondence, Rico's blueprints for the gray water modification. Fitz laughed halfway through our call. Her case wouldn't survive 2 minutes before any judge with a functioning brain. He chuckled. She's literally admitting to theft of utilities in her complaint. Still, Fitz prepared a comprehensive response to prevent any potential damage. Karen might be delusional, but she was also persistent. The next escalation arrived through the HOA, a violation notice printed in screaming red ink. It claimed I had made unauthorized alterations to property-facing infrastructure that could affect community drainage systems. The attached photograph made me burst out laughing. My garden hose with a crimson arrow pointing directly at the stone troll. Apparently, my $5.99 garden ornament was now classified as suspicious landscaping and a non-compliant concealment of mechanical plumbing. This was becoming almost too absurd to believe. Instead of responding with anger, I decided it was time to deploy my own strategic attack, not through sabotage or shouting matches, but by wielding the ultimate weapon against Karen: bureaucratic documentation. I compiled every piece of evidence: her theft, her misuse of plumbing, her fabricated reports. But I didn't send them to the HOA. I forwarded everything to the local health department. I included photos, video timestamps, and specifically highlighted footage of Karen's hot tub discharge flowing down her driveway into the storm drain. Environmental ordinances took that sort of contamination very seriously. For extra insurance, I also sent copies to Patricia Reynolds, a local columnist who wrote the popular Neighborhood Chronicles series. She loved these kinds of suburban soap operas. 7 days later, the dominoes began falling. A white municipal vehicle pulled up outside Karen's house, and 2 uniformed health inspectors emerged with clipboards and official demeanors. They circled her property for 15 minutes, photographing runoff points and taking soil samples before knocking on her door. Karen answered in her signature silk robe, visibly irritated. She gestured wildly, attempting various emotional states: outrage, sympathy, confusion. But the inspectors weren't interested in performance art. They documented everything methodically. When they left, Karen was fuming. She looked up, spotted me watching from my porch with a glass of sweet tea, and I raised it in a mock toast. Her response was a middle finger before slamming her door. 2 days passed before a bright orange notice was plastered across Karen's garage. Warning: unlicensed plumbing modifications under investigation. That notice was neighborhood catnip. Within hours, I received texts from residents I barely knew, all asking about what Karen did this time. People were whispering on their morning walks, pausing their jogs to examine the house. Stories multiplied like rabbits. Someone mentioned she'd redirected gutter water onto a neighbor's prize roses. Another recalled how she'd borrowed outdoor power for her Christmas light display. One brave soul admitted she'd once found Karen cutting lavender from their garden for anxiety purposes. But the real bombshell came when someone unexpected knocked on my door. Peter Davidson stood there, early 50s, wearing a faded blue polo from Davidson Roofing Co. and sporting a graying beard. He was Karen's ex-husband. "I saw Patricia's column about the hot tub situation," he said. "Thought it was time someone heard the full story." We talked in my backyard while he revealed everything: Karen's patterns of manipulation, her history of utility theft in their previous home, and how she weaponized bureaucracy against anyone who challenged her. "I kept documentation," Peter explained, handing me a USB drive. Legal insurance in case she ever tried dragging me back to court. The files he shared were a treasure trove: photographs of illegal cable hookups, rerouted pipes, even a temporary sewer bypass she constructed during their pool renovation. There was even a handwritten list of neighbors' weekly schedules, her way of tracking when houses would be empty. "You're the first person who's actually stood up to her," Peter said with visible relief. "Good luck, man." That night, I reviewed the evidence carefully. The photos were dated and detailed, showing the same patterns of entitled theft stretching back years. I backed up everything, made professional prints, and submitted another quiet package, this time to both the HOA board and the Utilities Enforcement Division. Karen had no idea a tsunami was building on her horizon. The column ran the next morning with a photograph that couldn't be mistaken: Karen mid-scream, covered in sewer foam as her paradise crumbled around her. The headline was merciless: "Spa Queen's Sewer Surprise. Justice Bubbles Over After Water Theft Backfires." The article didn't name her explicitly, but everyone in a 3-block radius knew exactly who it featured. The reporter had crafted it brilliantly, letting Karen's actions tell their own damning story. By afternoon, the sidewalk outside my house felt like Grand Central Station. Neighbors waved, smiled, even stopped to chat about the weather. Karen's hot tub, now permanently covered, drew stares like a crime scene. Some joggers slowed to a near stop, craning their necks for a better view. Karen, meanwhile, had transformed her house into a fortress. Every blind drawn tight, no movement visible through any window. But the internet never sleeps. The story jumped to community Facebook pages, then Reddit's local forums. By evening, it had spread to 3 neighborhood gossip accounts and a regional news aggregator. Comments flooded in with similar tales. Apparently, Karen represented a universal archetype of entitled behavior. Thomas the Troll Guardian became my accidental nickname. Not my choice, but it spread like wildfire. The attention might have been manageable, but the official consequences proved devastating. The next morning, the Environmental Health Department returned with reinforcements. This time, they carried orders, not questions. Karen stood defiantly at her door while officials sealed her hot tub with orange violation tape. They informed her that due to improper waste disposal and uncertified plumbing work, her spa system was classified as a community health risk. You'll need to bring it up to code or have it removed permanently, the lead inspector stated matter-of-factly. Karen's reaction was textbook, arguing, shouting, making dramatic phone calls while pacing in fuzzy slippers. She called someone who might have been another lawyer, ranting about harassment and persecution. The officials remained unmoved. By noon, a hazmat crew arrived, complete with protective gear and industrial equipment. Watching them wrap the hot tub in thick plastic sheeting and load it onto a flabbed truck was like witnessing the final act of a long-running farce. A few neighbors actually applauded from their porches. Karen's response was predictable. "This is harassment. I'll sue you all." Old Mr. Harrison from across the street shouted back, "You already tried that, sweetheart. Didn't work so well." She flipped him off. He raised his beer in salute. By evening, Karen's yard looked like a defeated battlefield. The tub was gone, surrounding grass browning from chemical residue, patio furniture stained with evidence of her failed empire. Through it all, she maintained radio silence, hiding behind closed curtains. Then came the flyer campaign. Every mailbox received a crisp white sheet titled, "A Message from a Persecuted Resident." It was a masterpiece of delusion, blaming everyone from me to the HOA to mysterious media conspiracies. She claimed the photos were edited, the story fabricated, the health department bribed. Most residents threw it directly into recycling. Some posted photos online with sarcastic comments. One creative soul even mounted theirs in a shadow box labeled "Performance Art, Karen's Final Act." I assumed that would conclude our bizarre neighborhood opera. I was naive. 3 weeks later, a real estate sign appeared on her lawn. Not a quiet listing hoping to slip under the radar. This was advertising warfare. The online listing was delusional. "Stunning spa-ready backyard paradise," it proclaimed. "Ideal for entertaining and wellness retreats." Photos showed a digitally enhanced yard featuring the long-gone hot tub in all its bubbly glory. The description even bragged about a fully permitted luxury spa system recently serviced. That final lie was my breaking point. I forwarded the listing to Patricia along with a simple note. "Thought you might enjoy this sequel." 24 hours later, Patricia published a follow-up piece. "Spa Scandal Continues. Debunked System Still Being Marketed." The article called out the blatant false advertising, included before and after comparisons, and confirmed with city officials that no such permits existed. The real estate agent dropped the listing within hours. Karen's property transformed from hot commodity to radioactive listing overnight. In desperation, she organized what she called a healing circle, inviting neighbors to discuss community harmony and moving forward together. She even hand-folded pastel-colored invitations shaped like origami swans. The response? Crickets. Zero attendance. None. The only thing left in her yard that afternoon was an anonymous gift, a laminated pool rules sign bolted to concrete that read "No unauthorized soaking, especially in sewer sauce." I knew exactly who sent it. Me, but anonymous credit was more satisfying. The house remained unsold through autumn, bouncing between agencies like a hot potato. Each realtor arrived with optimism and departed deflated. The price dropped in desperate increments. $5,000, then $10,000, then removing all buyer contingencies. Local memory proved longer than Karen's patience. The moment potential buyers spoke with neighbors, the truth emerged like water from a broken pipe. No amount of fresh paint could erase the legend of the sewer spa scandal. Karen became a neighborhood ghost. Gone were her morning wine sessions, her outdoor yoga, her pointed looks at passersby. She retreated inside, emerging only for quick errands, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Rumors circulated about lawyers in distant states, threats of federal lawsuits, conspiracy theories about media collusion. None gained traction. She'd become the boy who cried wolf. Nobody believed her anymore. Meanwhile, life on my side of the fence flourished. My garden recovered gloriously with proper irrigation. Birds returned to the feeders. The neighborhood's collective stress level dropped noticeably. I reinforced my outdoor defenses anyway, adding another security camera and chaining the stone troll permanently in place. The valve mechanism stayed for historical value. Though no longer needed, it had earned monument status. Eventually, I received an unexpected envelope from the HOA board. For a moment, old anxiety flickered. Had Karen engineered one final complaint? Instead, I found an apology letter. The board acknowledged their previous mishandling of Karen's accusations, admitted their failure to investigate properly, and informed me that Karen's fines had been quadrupled based on health department findings. Her HOA privileges were now suspended indefinitely. But the real surprise came at the end. They offered me a position on the board. I laughed out loud, then read it again. Me, the recently fined rebel, invited to join the establishment. I considered carefully, eventually accepting with specific conditions: no arbitrary fines, no favoritism, evidence-based decisions only. They agreed immediately. That October, I officially became a board member, not from ambition, but from necessity. Someone needed to prevent the next Karen from weaponizing fake rules against the community. When Karen learned about my appointment, she stormed into a meeting uninvited, demanding my removal for conflicts of interest. We calmly informed her that suspended members needed to submit written requests like everyone else. She left red-faced, trembling with impotent rage. That was her final public appearance. Early November brought a moving truck to 1247 Oakwood Drive. No farewell party, no goodbye notes, just the sound of boxes being loaded and furniture scraping against truck walls. Karen disappeared as dramatically as she'd operated, loudly, selfishly, and without consideration for others. The house has sat empty for weeks before relisting with a bare-bones description: 3BR/2BA, fresh paint, motivated seller. The hot tub wasn't mentioned. The spa paradise was never referenced. Just facts and desperation. When the Martinez family moved in 3 weeks later, the neighborhood exhaled collectively. Sarah and James were quiet, professional, with 2 kids and a golden retriever named Duke. I welcomed them properly, offering help with boxes and a gentle warning: if you ever need to borrow the garden hose, just ask. They laughed, admitting they had already heard the story from their realtor. Apparently, I'd achieved some level of neighborhood legend status. Before New Year's, I printed one of the viral photos from Patricia's article. Karen mid-scream, covered in sewage foam, the hose still gripped in her fury-contorted hand. I framed it and hung it in my garage near the breaker box, where only I could see it, not as a trophy, but as a reminder: standing up to bullies, even petty ones with too much time and too little empathy, was always worth the battle. And there it remains, a memorial to the great hot tub heist, alongside the stone troll who helped bring justice to Oakwood Drive. Sometimes late at night, I'll catch myself smiling at my reflection in the garage window, remembering the sound of Karen's final defeat. The water runs clear now, and the neighborhood breathes easier. That's victory enough for me.